Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, brought to you by the team of Citizen Advisory Group. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio is owner and financial advisor Kevin Bucher and financial advisor Pete Semenuk. We're so glad you're joining us today. We are in the midst of a two-part series covering the 5 checkpoints of retirement planning. So if you missed last week's show, we're so glad you're here today. We're going to do a recap for you of part 1 and then dive back into part 2. Kevin, Pete, so good to be here with you and have this continuing conversation. How are you this week?
Doing good.
We've never done a two-parter, huh?
Nope.
So did they previously on and catch the crowd up and all that stuff?
Yes, for sure. And we're going to review what we did cover last week, but I know you got such a huge response from last week's show, and I'm excited to pick up where we left off. And specifically, we're going to dive back into tax planning, but why don't you remind our viewers, in case they missed last week's show, what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so 5 areas of financial planning. It's what we call the retirement checkpoint review. It starts with an investment management. So we're looking at your investment portfolio, making sure that you have invested to meet your goals and objectives. It's then moving into the second area, which is retirement planning. And for most, that is largely going to be about retirement income strategy. So how do we get the income you need to support your lifestyle from sources like Social Security, pensions, and your investment portfolio? The third area is tax planning, which we're going to get into a little more detail here today. And then the fourth and fifth areas are risk management and legacy and estate planning, all of which will be covered on today's show. But a very typical scenario that we see is when we're meeting with someone for the first time is that they might be working with an advisor, so they have an investment person. They have somebody that's maybe doing their taxes, so they have a tax person.
A tax preparer.
And then they have somebody that's helping them with their insurance, and maybe they've done some estate planning with an attorney, and they have all these different people that have helped them, but they've never had any communication across these different professionals. So one hand has no idea what the other hand is doing.
Yes.
And that is where we just see a very disjointed plan gets put into place, and it's not working very efficiently to meet the needs of the individual who's spent the money across all these areas. So what we do with this checkpoint review is try to bring this all together and have it into a coordinated, efficient plan to meet the retirement goals and objectives.
Yes, you're a one-stop shop, if you will, doing it all together. And you know, you've heard me say this a lot, and I don't think it can be stressed enough. You can't afford to not look at all these pieces from a comprehensive, holistic perspective, because how you make a decision in one area of your financial life can and will affect all the others. And there's so many ways that folks can make a decision that can completely trigger negative consequences. And one of those areas often is taxes. That's why you guys do tax planning.
Yeah, taxes is, and that's kind of what we're continuing on today, is our conversation around tax planning. We covered retirement planning and cash flows in pretty good detail, investment management in decent detail, and the third pillar being tax planning. And a very, very underplanned for thing in retirement planning and just financial planning in general is the tax area. And a lot of times, advisors, either they're not qualified to do it, or they don't put emphasis on it, or they're not even allowed to do it.
A lot of big firms, big corporate firm. Yeah, talk
big
about
corporate
that.
firms just do not allow their advisors to talk about tax planning because they feel it's too big of a liability for them to take on, and so they're just missing the boat completely on it. But it's a huge part, and so we find all the time that people are letting money slip through the cracks, and all these things are so interconnected. We have to be proactive on tax planning just to make sure we're getting the most out of our dollars and making them stretch as far as we can.
For sure. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, because the bulk of the dollars that people have saved for retirement still to this day are in pre-tax retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs.
Yes.
So if we ignore the tax liability that comes with that, we really wouldn't be withholding our fiduciary responsibility to our clients and acting in their best interest to do so.
Right. Well, last week we talked a little bit about this retirement tax bill calculator, and what we want to do today is really walk you through this. We got a huge response off of this. This is an incredible resource that you can use, completely complimentary, and we're going to walk you through this step by step, but we encourage you, we know your smartphone's laying right there. Go ahead, pick it up, visit this site, mytaxbilltest.com. You can click on that QR code that will take take you there as well. And here is what you are going to see. When you visit that site, it's going to ask you for some basic information, no strings attached. You'll put in your name, the email address that you want your complimentary report sent to, and then it's going to ask you for how much money you currently have saved up in tax-deferred accounts. Again, for you, that could be a traditional 401k, traditional 403b, a traditional IRA, things of that nature. You'll put in your current age, because what this is going to do is actually calculate your projected tax bill over your lifetime. Then there's two little sliders you'll see down there you can play around with and adjust, including your tax liability, along with the assumed growth rate on that tax-deferred bucket of money. Then, once you click submit, two things are going to happen. First up, side by side, boom, there it is. You're going to see the difference between the government's tax plan for you if you do nothing versus how much less you could pay in tax there on the right-hand side if you enact some of the tax saving strategies that the team of Citizen Advisory Group engage in with their clients. But then you're also going to receive a complimentary 4-page report emailed to you. This is a snapshot of 1 page of that report that'll show you the breakdown of your numbers side by side. And I know we say this a lot. Once folks see those numbers side by side, you can't unsee that. And the good news is you don't have to settle for the government's tax plan for you, right?
Yeah, and that right there, what we're showing, that's the whole thing, right? And it's just simply mathematics. I mean, that is just simply mathematics to say, look, if this is my tax rate today, and this is what I pay, and I do nothing about it, and just let those assets continue to grow until the government forces us to do it at required minimum distribution age, and then I'm reinvesting those dollars and paying more taxes on it, as opposed to being proactive, it literally saves hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. And you don't have to have a lot of money to save hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, you might be talking about paying 40% of your money in taxes, as opposed to something like 20 to 25%. And you don't need a lot of money for those bills to really start kind of adding up.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and this awareness is the first step, because a lot of folks don't realize that they are headed into retirement with a tax bill problem. We mentioned this last week, but I think it's worth mentioning again. A lot of folks have been told, oh, but this was a good thing, right? You put this money into these tax deferred accounts, they're going to grow tax deferred, and then when you go to pull the money out in retirement, you should be in a lower tax bracket. But what folks are discovering is often they get to that stage of life and that's not the case.
Yeah, it's like the football game where you did really well in the first half of the game, and now when you get to retirement, you're in the second half. And the games are typically won in the second half, right? So the tax planning that has to, because it's like, okay, now what do we do with all this tax deferred money that we've accumulated?
Right.
And having the right plan for that is going to be very specific to the individual person, because it's going to be different for everybody. I think it's important just to point out that this tool, My Tax Bill Test, that you can find at mytaxbilltest.com, is a high-level tool. It's not going to get into the weeds of a sophisticated tax planning strategy. It's centered around just a couple simple inputs, and it's assuming fixed rates of growth and fixed tax rates, when in the real world we know that those things are variable. So this again is a high-level tool that's just meant to be a conversation starter, but it is an eye-opening tool that will highlight that we need to do something. We need to get started and play this game.
Yes, we need to take action, and the more time you have on your side, the easier it's going to be to put these strategies into place. I know we'll get into those strategies when we come back, but I'm confident that folks who are going and using this tool right now, they're looking at those numbers side by side and going, help, right? Help me figure this out. So what would you say to someone who's probably dealing with a little bit of shock right now as they look at what their potential tax bill might be in retirement?
Yeah, I think it's important that you take advantage of the opportunity to sit down with an advisor who's looking at all of these areas together through the retirement checkpoint review. So let's examine what inputs that you used. Let's make sure that this is the right output for your situation, and then start to talk about strategies. But it's all part of the retirement checkpoint review that we're going to go through. That's going to involve investments, income, taxes, insurance, and your estate plan, making sure that everything is together in a coordinated fashion so that you can live out the remaining years you have and do things on your terms and live the life that you want to live.
Yes, and not have to pay any more to the IRS than you are legally required to pay, right?
Yes, you got it.
Well, Kevin, Pete, thank you. I'm excited to continue the conversation with you. To our viewers at home, that number to call to schedule your time to come in and receive your very own complimentary complimentary retirement checkpoint review is there for you on the bottom of your screen, 866-630-1675. Or if you'd rather connect online, you can simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with tax saving strategies and the final two pillars of a comprehensive, holistic financial plan for you right after this.
As a youth, I spent my summer months on the construction sites with my family. I think I learned early on the value of hard work. Ultimately, though, I was led into the financial services world where I joined my brother Jeff.
You know, I think many people think that the financial piece is just so prevalent and the most important component, but there's just more to it than that. It's about the experiences, it's about the relationships, it's about the life that our clients are living.
They've got things set up so that the biggest decisions I have to make are whether to use a 9-iron or a pitching wedge, and what is my cocktail this evening.
It's our family coming together with your family. It's your financial pieces coming together to have a coordinated plan. It's our community coming together to keep that social connection.
I like the family atmosphere that they have. I think they treat everybody like they're part of the family of Citizen Advisory Group. I just love that they take care of us.
I think we pride ourselves on the comprehensive services that we offer, which starts with the holistic financial planning. That retirement checkpoint view is going to be a full review across the areas of investments, your income, taxes, insurance, and your legacy and estate plan to make sure that you have a coordinated plan and it is tailored to you, the individual.
We build all of this together to get the most out of your retirement so that you can have the retirement that you've always dreamt of.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Kevin and Pete from Citizen Advisory Group. We're so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, we've picked up our conversation talking about the importance of engaging in strategic tax planning for your retirement. If you have not already, we encourage you to use this complimentary resource that's available to you. Simply visit mytaxbilltest.com. You can also get there by scanning that QR code. You're going to be able to see side by side the difference between the government's tax plan for you if you do nothing versus how much less you could pay in taxes if you enact some of these tax saving strategies that we're going to be talking about now. And really, this is something I know that you love to help folks do, is to save as much money as possible when it comes to taxes. So first up on the list of strategies, we got to talk about Roth conversions. There's a lot of talk about those these days. Explain why this is a crucial thing for folks to consider.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tax strategies that somebody can use, but I'll jump into kind of the first one and kind of the low-hanging fruit is the Roth conversions, okay, is where people don't realize we're talking about all these tax problems. You know, what is it? It's a tax problem. We know it's a problem. It's like, but people are like, what do I do about it? Most people are going to do nothing about it. Sit by and just let it happen. A lot of folks think
there isn't anything that
they don't think there is anything you can do about it, okay? Yeah. But really what you're allowed to do, the IRS allows you to do, is voluntarily start to pay tax on your pre-tax assets. You can say, look, you know, Uncle Sam, I want to take $50,000 out of my IRA, move it over to a Roth IRA and voluntarily pay those taxes. Now, that Roth IRA, it stays invested. It's still yours. You can get the money. It's liquid, okay? But you've already paid the tax on it. So all the growth, all the interest is completely tax-free to you, okay? And what most people, I get this question all the time is, isn't there a limit on what I can put into a Roth? Okay, there's a difference between a Roth contribution and a Roth conversion. Okay, contribution, you are limited by the government between $7,000 to $8,000 depending on your age, but a Roth conversion is unlimited. Okay, I'm not recommending you do an unlimited amount or do all of it. Okay, but you can do $100,000 of Roth conversion a year, and that's perfectly fine. So doing Roth conversions, everybody can do a Roth conversion.
Yes.
Okay, from age 18 to 120.
Right.
Okay, you're allowed to do a Roth conversion, and there's no limit on the amount.
Yes, and while there are income limits to making contributions to Roth, those income limits don't apply to the conversion. So that's a huge thing for folks to know and understand. Yep. Awesome. What are some of the other tax saving strategies that often come up in your planning sessions with folks? Yeah,
so kind of sticking with the tax deferred accounts where you have the potential to do Roth conversions strategically at the tax rates that make sense to you. You can also reduce the taxation of those qualified accounts with your charitable giving. So specifically for those that have reached the age of 70 and a half, they can utilize something called a qualified charitable distribution, which is a distribution from that pre-taxed account, that tax-deferred account, that is not reportable as income. So for those that are retired and drawing their Social Security, that has a double benefit because it also doesn't trigger the extra taxation of your Social Security benefits. So again, if you're 70 and a half and you're charitably inclined, there is a smart, more efficient way to make those charitable distributions than just taking a withdrawal from your account and making that contribution, called the qualified charitable distribution.
And that's at any, no matter what you're giving. If you're giving money to the charity, it might as well come from an IRA.
Correct.
That could be $1,000.
Yeah. With using the right structure of that, meaning I have to take it from my tax deferred account in the right way to get it to that charity. So there's some nuances to that. But then outside of the tax deferred accounts, when we look at the taxable accounts that could be generating taxable interest, well, we need to have strategies to be more efficient with the interest that our taxable accounts are generating, especially today when we're in a higher interest rate environment, right? So that money that we might have parked in a high yielding money market or a CD, and it might feel really good to finally be making 4 or 5% interest. But if that's inside a taxable account, I'm actually not making 4 to 5% because Uncle Sam is taking taxes off of that. And then just as importantly, having a capital gain strategy to take advantage of my losses and my gains. So I think a lot of people are unaware of how to manage their capital gains. There's 3 different capital gains rates because they're different than the ordinary income tax rates.
Right.
So whoever comes up with these rules, they do it in a way to try to keep it as simple for everyone as possible.
Said no one ever, right?
Okay, right.
Yes.
So there's 3 different capital gains rates. So it's often that we find somebody that's in retirement that actually has some capital gains that they can be realizing at the best of those rates, which is 0. So that would allow you each year to harvest some of your gains at 0% and reset your basis to a higher amount. But even after that, it's now 15%. I think that's still a pretty efficient tax rate. So just having strategies around how we're going to harvest gains and use losses to offset gains in some instances is something that's oftentimes neglected. You know, we were talking earlier about a lot of advisors are not allowed to give tax advice, or it's just something they don't get into. And man, what an amazing world that would be for an advisor, right, Pete? I mean, we spend so much time in the area of tax planning. How much more simple my life would be if we just said, we're not going to help you with that. But again, it's not part of the fiduciary responsibility that we feel we have with our clients. We need to help them across all of these areas to get the best possible results.
Yeah, and a lot of times the tax planning isn't really benefiting us directly. You know, a lot of times it might be taking money out of our pockets just based on how our fees are structured and how we're paid.
But it's the right
We're
thing
recommending
to do.
people pay more in taxes, which takes money out of the accounts just to put them and their family into a better position long term.
Well, and just
I'm
to
glad
clarify,
you. We're not recommending they pay more in taxes.
Exactly.
We're recommending sometimes that they pay some taxes today
To put
Versus-
themselves
to
in
have a lower tax burden later.
right?
Yes.
That's the trade-off,
Yes.
right? And of course, there's so many things that would go into someone's personal situation to determine how much, when, if it's the right strategy. So again, if you have not yet visited this awesome resource, we do encourage you to go to this website, mytaxbilltest.com. You can scan that QR code, see what your potential tax bill might be over the course of your lifetime. The awareness is the first step, and then the team can work with you to start figuring out ways to create greater tax efficiency throughout your full financial plan. Really, that's just the first step. The real gravy is going to be coming in and sitting down with you guys one-on-one, going through this retirement checkpoint review and seeing how this all fits into their plan.
Yes, it's one piece, and it's an important piece. But when we look at it all together, we can really start to make informed decisions to put you and your family in the best possible position moving forward.
Wonderful. Well, I know we've got 2 more pillars to get to, but this is a great opportunity for you to connect with the team of Citizen Advisory Group. 866-630-1675 is that number to call to schedule your very own complimentary retirement checkpoint review. We'll be back with the final 2 pillars right after this.
As individuals, we strive for better. From a better house, to a better career, to a better life for our kids. But when it comes to your retirement, what does better mean to you? More income? A flexible lifestyle? Better solutions? A better retirement begins with a plan. To get your complimentary written financial plan, call the number you see here. You only retire once. This is your opportunity to plan for better. Imagine not having to face your retirement with the same old corporate solutions as everyone else. In these economic times, you deserve a fresh perspective that includes a personalized retirement income plan, investment portfolio analysis, and tax map from an independent fiduciary advisor whose focus is on you. Call the number you see here to schedule your complimentary review right now.
Did you ever think that your own retirement would be shared with our government? It's true. Your 401k, IRA, pension, or similar retirement accounts are in partnership with Uncle Sam. Simply put, they want their tax dollars and you have them. With our latest tax calculator, you can plug in your own numbers while sitting right at home. To see what your tax liability to Uncle Sam projects to be, scan the QR code or go to mytaxbilltest.com.
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm Kristen Oakley here with Kevin and Pete from Citizen Advisory Group. It's time now for us to talk about the remaining 2 pillars of the 5 pillars of retirement planning. Again, we are talking about the importance of building a comprehensive, holistic financial plan for you and your retirement. Pillar number 4 is risk management. Now, here's what's interesting about risk. We cannot eliminate all risks, but there are certainly risks that we need to be prepared for to navigate through successfully. So that's my first question for you guys. What's at the top of the list when you think about risk management and helping your clients with what risks they might face?
Well, let me start by saying, we've done a variation of this show a few times, and we never quite have time to get to these last 2 pillars and the depth that we want. So we decided to break this into 2 segments, 2 different episodes, and here we are cramming these 2 into the final segment.
Yes, there's always more to talk about, right?
So I think the first thing that comes into mind for me is it's really healthcare and health insurance, protecting our assets in the event of a long-term illness or some type of injury, and that is what insurance is meant to be. It's not about it's not just about getting the care you need, but it's about protecting your financial resources so that you can get the care that you need.
Yep.
And it's an unfortunate reality that for most of us that as we get older and age, that our health doesn't usually improve. So that's an area that as a firm that we've always been very involved in health insurance planning, and it's something that I think is another differentiator for us. But health insurance planning is a very important thing as we get older.
For sure, because there's that misconception out there that Medicare, yes, it kicks in at age 65, but it does not cover everything. And according to Fidelity, the average 65-year-old couple retiring today will need approximately $315,000 saved just for healthcare expenses in retirement. That's a huge amount of money.
Chump change.
And don't let it scare you. Don't let that think I can't retire, I don't have enough money. But the reality is when you plan for it properly, it just becomes a lot less scary, right? But we do have to have a lot of money saved aside for what are our healthcare premiums going to be? What are we going to pay as far as co-pays? And then transitioning into like long-term care planning. And we're going to do a more specific episode on that, so I won't get into too much more detail. But our insurance needs change, just like our investment strategies over the course of our life. Our insurance needs change. Right now in my life, I need more life insurance. I don't want more life insurance. Let me make that clear. I don't want more life insurance, but I'm going to get more life insurance because it's the right thing to do for me and my family. Most of our retirees and people that are retired do not need a whole lot of life insurance because your insurance needs change as you go through kind of the different areas of financial planning in your life. That shifts to healthcare planning and long-term care insurance planning as well.
Yeah, for sure. So much goes into that.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to that Fidelity study. So Fidelity does a good job of updating those numbers as far as the average healthcare expenses for a retiree throughout retirement. But it's important to point out that you generally don't need all $315,000 at once. So it goes back to the importance of having a coordinated plan. And in this retirement income plan, we have to have income to support these expenses for healthcare that are somewhat predictable, right? We know we're going to have health insurance, so what is the cost of that? And then we also know we need to inflate that over the course of our retirement because healthcare costs don't typically stay the same.
Right.
So again, we don't need all $315,000 all at once. It has to be built into our plan over time. And by planning properly, it gives us the peace of mind to now utilize our resources for things besides just the negative what ifs that might happen. We can use it for things that we enjoy to do.
Yes, so key. Well, we've got a couple minutes left. We do need to address the fifth pillar, which is estate planning. Similarly, we've done entire shows on that important conversation. You know, this is something that I think a lot of folks put off and are scared to address. But from your perspective and opinion, this is a crucial part of what it means to have a comprehensive, holistic financial plan. And it's not just about preserving your wealth, it's about having control in what wishes someone has that they want to have carried out, right?
Yeah, and it's the final pillar because it is the final thing, right? It's your estate planning and things. But I have a case very recently where someone's estate plan is completely misaligned with what their final wishes are. You know, they've got a myriad of things that they want to happen with the money. There's a sibling that needs taken care of. There's some special needs individuals where the money needs to be protected. And a big misconception is that the will take care of it. Well, I have a will. We did a will. And the will is just the wills aren't good enough.
A piece of it, right. It's
Wills
not
just
enough.
are not good enough to have.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to have a trust. A will might be good enough in your situation, but it's very underplanned for, and people just neglect it because, well, it might not be that important to them.
Well, in beneficiary designations, it doesn't matter what the will says. Those need to be up to date because those will always trump what the will says. So that's another huge piece that folks need to be paying attention to.
And you said a really important word, Kristen. I don't know if you realized it when you said it, but it was a really important word, and it's control. And control carries across all of these areas of financial planning that we talked about. And it's the whole point that you do comprehensive financial planning is so that you can control the things that you can control. Because there's a lot of things out there that you can't control.
Correct.
But you want to control the controllables, and that's what planning is all about. And estate planning, unfortunately, is the last thing we usually talk about, and here we are running out of time with it again. But it's just one of those really important things that you want to make sure you have your affairs in order before it's too late to do so.
Yes, so true. And that ties up everything we've been talking about over the last 2 weeks. So Kevin, Pete, thank you so much. Here's the reality. We know that a lot of this might be new to you and it might feel overwhelming. The good news is it's not new to Kevin and Pete and the team of Citizen Advisory Group. You don't have to go it alone. They would love to help put together all these pieces for you, but you have to reach out and call 866-630-1675. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Retire Well.